Chapter 15, Everest by Wim Hof. On April 1st, 2007, we left for Everest. We took a flight to Dubai and connected to Kathmandu. News of my approaching arrival was booming. Some guy from Holland is going to climb Everest in shorts. The news was everywhere. My philosophy was Hillary and Tenzin did it with clothes and oxygen. Messner did it without oxygen. I will try it without oxygen and without clothes. It was a very controversial matter, but it spread throughout the news all over the world. The journalists were waiting for us as we arrived at the airport in Kathmandu, Nepal. There I was, back in Nepal with the new team. As we drove through the crazy traffic in the streets, cars honked all around us. The expectations were high and this affected me, but I didn't let my feelings show. Instead, I held it inside, which only made me think of all the things that could go wrong. I reminded myself that the only thing I could do was just be ready and the rest would follow. My main concern was my body. I needed to focus my nervous system, immune system, blood circulation, heart, and mind, just to bring them all together. I also did a lot of my own personal research by speaking to the local Sherpas. They are very wise and know the mountain like the back of their hand. They told me, "We'll see how much you can do. Even though it will be a long hike, you seem fast and strong." After they witnessed me performing my technique during one of my training sessions, they approached me with questions. I decided to spend some time with the Sherpas until the day I left for Everest arrived. The Chinese authorities greeted us as we passed the border. We then drove down the Friendship Highway toward the Tibetan Plateau. From there, it was only a 4,000-meter drive, which is 2.5 miles. We planned to stay in the village for a couple days, so our bodies would be able to acclimatize. Along with buying large portions of food for the trip, we played football to help condition our bodies to the new climate. To further practice and prepare our bodies for the ascent, we also climbed nearby mountains. Before we knew it, the day was upon us when we would leave for the Everest base camp at 5,200 meters, which is 17,060 feet. We packed our jeeps and hit the road. Along the way, we passed all kinds of Tibetan villages and rocky pastures. After some time, we stopped at Rongbuk Monastery at 4,800 meters, which is 15,748 feet. We filmed there for a bit, but didn't stay too long because we didn't want to intrude on the people that lived there. After an hour or so, we returned to our jeeps and continued our drive to the base camp. Finally, we were there, the base camp of Mount Everest. Komolungma, Chinese for Everest. Sagarmatha, Hindi for Everest. Here, we would stay to acclimatize for days. Tents surrounded us. They weren't all just sleeping tents either. There was a huge kitchen tent where everyone cooked, a tent where people could purchase items and supplies, a showering tent, a tent to eat in, and an office tent where you could reserve your place on the grounds. After we had found our spot and settled in, I went exploring in the adjacent mountains. Everything went well, and I was excited for the things to come. When I got back to camp, I started playing the blues on a guitar. Many people heard it and came over to listen. Afterwards, we played football again, though with half as much as oxygen in the air, it was hard to run for extended periods of time, so we didn't play it for very long. It is important for one to relearn his body's limits in a new environment. When the team leader felt that the group was acclimatized enough, he decided it was time to go to the interim camp at 5,800 meters, 19,028 feet. I told the leader that we should look at the weather forecast before we left. I just had a feeling that it was going to snow in the early afternoon. Since I was climbing the mountain in shorts, I just wanted to make sure the weather conditions were perfect. This is where we hit our first snag. In my opinion, I think the leader's decision to leave when we did wasn't a very good one. As we departed from base camp, the clouds began to cover the sky. The team leader told us to keep going while the clouds only became denser. When we arrived at 5,400 meters, which is 17,716 feet, snow began to fall. I told the group that the overall pace was just too slow for me. I'm a lot faster when I'm in my rhythm, and I needed to follow what my body was telling me. So I continued on, in shorts, at my own pace, a fast pace. The head Sherpa tried to get a hold of me and slow me down, but I was ignited by my drive. Finding a good pace can be the key to continuing strong. It's also important to just watch how much oxygen you're consuming. You don't want to waste all of your energy and have to stop for breaths to recover. After a couple of times doing this myself, I realized it wasn't efficient. By monitoring your breathing and making sure you never push past your breaking point, you can continue on for hours at a steady but strong pace. The snow began to fall even harder, and soon my visibility became limited. I couldn't see the path. It was my first time in shorts at an unknown height in an unknown place where blankets of snow covered the rocky terrain. Intuition and drive were my only companions. I felt surprisingly good despite the situation and continued my pace up the mountain trail. I was in the snow for hours. The limited visibility reminded me of my solitude, but I still felt remarkably well. I looked ahead of me and saw the outline of an object through the snow. As I came closer, the shape widened out and I realized it was a tent. When I was about a meter away, I saw a few Tibetans staring at me. They were astounded at the Caucasian man who had just emerged from the blizzard wearing only shorts. They invited me inside their tent, gave me some tea with sugar, and placed a blanket around my shoulder. After 3/4 of an hour, the head Sherpa arrived and looked in awe at me in total control of the situation. He was worried for me because he was responsible for everyone in his party. Yet, I was absolutely content. I felt that I had shaken hands with Everest's nature. I had connected with the mountain and its people. I overcame my fear of the unknown, and my anxiety had vanished. I also was able to see how fast I could move without acquiring any form of mountain sickness. The confidence I gained in my inner nature made me feel that I was on the path to accomplishing a lot more on that mountain. I had optimistic thoughts and felt fully capable. After eating in another tent across the riverbed, we returned to our sleeping quarters and fell asleep at our 5,800-meter mark, 19,028 feet. I was ready to take on new steps for mankind. The next day, our team leader had us acclimatize more by climbing in the neighboring areas. We climbed and walked over a small path towards 6,000 meters, 19,685 feet. It was the highest point I had ever been on a mountain. It was also my personal record for highest altitude while wearing shorts. We then returned back to the interim camp. The acclimatization process must have gone well for me because I felt great. It was my personal goal to reach the highest point on Everest and for it to happen in only shorts. I wanted to show that being exposed, almost naked in nature, is the way it's supposed to be, even the extremes. To me, clothing and artificial oxygen are like using a car to get from point A to point B. Unlike walking or riding a bike, you simply step on the gas and go. Of course, it's still difficult to climb Everest even with auxiliary tools, oxygen, clothing, but doing it the natural way makes things a lot simpler. The following day, we began our climb to 6,400 meters, 20,997 feet. There, we would enter the Advanced Base Camp, ABC, where one can see the beautiful North Col at its height of 7,060 meters, 23,162 feet. Tenzin, the head Sherpa, and I went ahead of the others because our rhythm and pace were much faster than the rest of the group. As we climbed up the slopes, the leader of the camera team filmed us. Tenzin told the camera that, despite being fully clothed, he was still freezing. He said that he was amazed at how I was climbing in only shorts. This is not something I'm able to do because I'm fast and strong, but because I'm able to fight through my fears and interact with the mountain. Instead, I'm stronger and faster in a natural way, where I remain connected to the environment around me. My senses are more perceptive in the mountain climate where my body is exposed. My mind and body adjust naturally. It's reflexive. We stayed a couple of days at the ABC camp, and we were soon acclimatized. It's fairly easy to tell how well the body has adapted to the environment. All you need to do is monitor the oxygen saturation and heart rate. High oxygen saturation and a low heart rate are the ideal variables to be well conditioned in high altitudes. It seemed that I had both of these in my favor, as I had acclimatized extremely well. One of the days at the ABC, I was feeling so full of energy that I decided to climb the North Col. Driven, I threw on my shorts and jogged over to the base. When I first arrived at North Col, the wind was really bad. The wind speed was over 100 kilometers per hour, which is over 62 miles per hour. Of course, when you're wearing shorts and wind speeds that high, you can really feel it against your skin. I stayed there for an hour, but decided that it wasn't wise to go up any further. I had no choice but to abort. I was disappointed, but I knew I would be back soon to try again. Later on, I returned to North Col with Tenzin. His pace was just too fast, and I was desperately trying to follow up. What happened? I was faster than him when we were hiking to the interim camp, but now, his speed had far exceeded my own. It soon was obvious who was more acclimatized in that terrain. While trying to keep up with him during the ascent, I collapsed regularly while trying to catch my breath. I was exhausted. Slowly but surely, I fought my way up until I reached the peak of North Col at 7,060 meters, 23,162 feet. It was my new personal record in shorts. At the peak, we set up flags around the area, including a flag of a poet, Rob Tuakana, who is a dear friend of mine. Another flag we raised with a united world flag, which exemplified enlightened beings as the world's inhabitants. On the flag was a big sun with bright beams, symbolizing the equality of human beings. It was beautiful. Lastly, we took some pictures for our sponsors. After we got a few good shots of the necessary material, We were content and headed back down to ABC. We passed the news over satellite telephone to inform the world of our recent achievement. We found out the next day that we had made international news. The headlines read, Iceman reaches North Pole, and Who can stop the Iceman? All was going well. After several more ascents up North Pole, I felt more acclimatized. Everyone was very impressed by my agility, speed, and endurance. Also, the frequent checkups with the medical team showed that my oxygen saturation was high and my heart rate stayed low, which is perfect. One day, after returning from North Pole, the team leader decided to go down a little to recover before the final ascent of Everest. It was a strategic way to ascend. We were so used to the thin air of the higher altitudes that at 4,600 meters, 15,091 feet, that the air felt thick. We stayed there for 3 beautiful days, barely eating anything. When you're in high altitudes, your appetite is limited. The higher you climb, the more your body shuts down the non essential functions to preserve energy for your vital organs. It's survival mode. When we were completely recovered and felt refreshed, we went back to the ABC and then began traveling up to the 7,060 meter mark, 23,162 feet, at the North Pole. We spent the night there and then left for the next marker. We made it up to the 7,200 meter mark, again 23,622 feet, and it was here that I had again accomplished a new personal record in shorts. Finally, the day came for us to ascend up to the 7,800 and 8,300 meter marks, which is again respectively 25,590 and 27,230 feet. Here, the Sherpas had set up a few tents for us. There were also oxygen bottles waiting for us, which we were to use when summiting. That day, I felt great and went up the slope very fast. I ascended 200 meters in 1 hour with Tenzin. Then I realized that something was wrong. I felt something going on inside of my left foot. That frostbite injury that I had developed in Finland was healed, but apparently the veins were just not as conditioned as they used to be. The entire circulation system, as well as the veins, has to be able to constrict and dilate to be able to adjust to the cold and altitude. Whenever there is less oxygen in the air, the veins in the extremity naturally close to conserve heat and redirect blood flow to the core to preserve the essential organs. Then, after adaptation, the veins open up again and the extremities are filled with warm blood. However, due to my recent cold injury, the veins in my left foot weren't opening. There was a tight pressure and I began to feel pain. I could feel that the veins in my foot weren't going to open back up again, so I was forced to turn around. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that if I didn't turn back at that moment, I would lose my foot forever. I was not going to make that same mistake twice. Even though the expedition cost us €250,000, which at the time was about $340,000 to $350,000, and completing this challenge would have brought me everlasting honor, being the only man to ever climb Everest in shorts, it was not worth losing my foot over. I decided to think rationally and listen to what my body was telling me. I looked around on the roof of the world and felt satisfied with what I had accomplished. I had fought through my fears and set a new record height of 7,450 meters, 24,442 feet, in only shorts. The press brought the story and the pictures of the expedition to the entire world. I returned to Holland and prepared for my next attempt. In a month's time, I was going to attempt a Guinness World Record in a polar bear compound. By the time I got home, I felt completely rejuvenated and healthy in both body and mind. My foot thanked me for being able to take some time to heal altogether. Remember, we can do more than we think, but only when we break through the inhibitions of fear and other obstacles. Rationality keeps us alive.